Okay, so here is a nice little 212 that I got off of a roller. I've had a handful of folks a little nervous about doing the governor delete and oil sensor. It's actually pretty darn tootin' easy, and I'm going to give you my little version from what I've learned from everybody else. So I've already taken off the governor, arm and assembly, throttle mechanism, whole air intake's off, and I also took out the muffler for ease of doing this. I've already drained the oil because we're now going to take the side cover off here real quick. So let's get this little oil sensor off here first. This is the little control relay or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to save that, put that little bolt back in there because we may use it. It's just number 8 metric stuff. Just disconnect that. This gets thrown away. That's garbage at this point. Okay, so now we're going to move over to our 10 millimeter little socket. Get these bolts out. Pull the side cover off. Now, probably if you're doing this on a brand new engine, you're not going to need a new side cover gasket. This is not a new engine by any means, so you can, I know just because I've already had this cover off, that gasket is ripped. It's down here ripped, so I do have a new one for it. Also, when you take these covers off, you want to be at times a little careful if you're not that knowledgeable that you don't let the cam fall out. So leaning that bad boy back down when you do this can be a benefit for you. I'm just going to put something underneath there to what do we got here? There. Okay, so down inside we've got a little oil sensor mechanism, and this is our little governor that we're going to end up yanking out. So I am going to take the cam out because it's going to be a little easier to get to the little 8 millimeter bolts in here for both of these. Get that, and right here on the cam are timing dots that line up with that little dot. There's a little dot right there on the crank, and that dot, that little those two line up, and no worries. Now also, by leaving this sideways, you're not going to drop your lifters down or anything. I'm actually pretty pleased with how this little engine looks inside compared to how dirty it was outside. Don't look too bad. Okay, so this little thing comes all the way out. I like saving those bolts because they're always nice and clean. That's got a little O-ring on there on the inside, I believe, so you can just screw that one right off. Then we're going to get this so there's a little more room in there. Just pulling that over a little bit. Oop, I get a grip on it. Ugh. Oh, come on. Get that little thing. I just can't get leverage on it right now to give us a little room in there. Oh, I got a little compression going. Hello, buddy. Well, because I need that to get out of the way. Well, okay, here we go. Oh, that. The arm is still a little bit. There. Over back a little bit to where get that oil sensor out. Get that to bottom out. Voila. That little bad boy. Will come on out of there. There we go. Okay. Now that's all goes. Also garbage. Grab me a little rag. Okay. So oil sensor's out. Now I'm going to put a rag in there. Now inside here, once I take a Dremel, cut this little piece off, that whole arm will fall down in there. So I want to keep it up as high as I can. So I'm just going to push a rag down there to keep the rod up high. That way I can cut off as much right here and it comes down. So let me stick just the cam back in here temporarily, so I don't drop the lifters. Grab my little Dremel. And let's cut that little Now I will do a version of this. That's going to be hot, so I'm not going to touch it. With one of my buddies, it'll show you where we can take off the flywheel and pop that entire pin out, take the crank out, and that entire piece will just drop right out. But I don't want to take the flywheel off, so we're not gonna. So that little bad boy's out. Take this back out. Pull the stock cam back out. And now I'm going to get this positioned to where I should be able to pull that little bad boy right out here. I got it positioned the right way, and voila. Now, you notice on this, there is a little washer. Sometimes it gets stuck right up on the top of there. Make sure that comes out. You don't want that floating around in there. Now for the fun part. We're going to take out the little oil spinner. That, first couple times you do it, drive you crazy. Because down in here, I'm going to take that little cap off. That comes off. There's a washer that came with it. And then, get my light over here. Down in there, around that little oil spinner, is a dinky little collar, a pin, if you want to call it that, that is holding that spinner in. So my technique is with a hammer and a screwdriver. Give it a handful of blasts and it'll knock that bad boy loose. So I'm just going to rest a nice, I got a nice flathead screwdriver. Give it a couple whacks there. And I hope that you can see down in there. Get it up on that little pin. And I can see that it's starting to come loose. I'm going to give it a couple more jabs and then grab some pliers to it. Good whack. Another right over here. Okay, let's see how that's doing. Once that comes loose, this little guy, I don't think I got it yet, because it'll pull right up. Okay, so I don't, so I'm going to give it some more blasts with my little screwdriver. And this is something that's kind of will freak you out a little bit, but you don't have to be gentle. See if it's going to move yet. The last one I did, it came right out. Oh, there it's moving. Look at that. Okay, so now here, little oil spinner. That gets thrown away. And another little washer is down in there that you always want to get out. So I got my little handy dandy magnet. You got a little magnet on a screwdriver. Get down in there, take a little flathead screwdriver on one side and work that little piece up. It's going to get stuck with a little bit of oil in there, and voila. So there's that. That little, you can barely see how I jam that little O-ring cotter pin, that little collar pin down in there. So that's out. Now there are some versions of guys that will actually take that post and knock that through and tap that. I'm going to leave it in there for now. I'm also going to leave the gear on the back side of the crank. So let's lay this back. I'm going to put that cam back in temporarily. Now don't forget, I'm just putting the cam back in here willy-nilly. I am not lining up the timing dots. I do that just so I don't have to mess with the lifters or anything coming out. Now, I'm going to do this the cheap way. Quarter by 20, 3/4 inch. It'll kind of tap itself in there and just go right down. Seal that top hole up. There are some guys that will tap that. Oops, that was not the right one. That is. I'm just going to start it a little bit and then just crank that right down in there. Voila. That, good enough for me. Then also, where the oil sensor is, crank that around enough. I am going to take, what is this, a 3/8 bolt, 1 inch. Going to get her up through that hole. Nylock over the top of it. Take my 9/16. My 9/16. Go the other way. Get that just snug. Voila. Okay, so governor arm cut, removed, 1/4 20, 3/8 with a nylock. Let's get our cam back lined up. I'm gonna get some of that other old